Let's talk about the foods. There are 7 of them that have the potential to actually kill you. So you need to know about these. Let's start at number 1. Green potatoes. But guess what? If you are on keto, you're not going to be eating potatoes at all, so you're pretty much safe. But for those people who are not on keto, avoid green potatoes. When you see the green pigment, which is a combination of chlorophyll as well as solanine, realize that is a nerve toxin. And it becomes very toxic at about 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. There's roughly about between 30 and 50 milligrams of this chemical in potatoes, but realize you have to be eating the green part of that potato. So if you're not on keto and for some reason you eat potatoes, just cut off the green parts. I found the average person in the US consumes 1 potato every single day. Since there's a lot of people not eating potatoes because they're on keto, the other percentage of people are making up. And they're probably doing quite a bit of potatoes, probably not in the form of raw potatoes, but probably in the form of potato chips or French fries. But this compound, solanine, is a natural pesticide designed to protect the potato, but if you are exposed to it, it can cause nausea, vomiting, bleeding internally, paralysis, coma, and potentially death. Number 2. Nutmeg the spice. The compound in nutmeg that's poisonous is called myristicin, and even at 2 milligrams you'll get a fever and a headache. At about 7.3 grams you can start losing consciousness. And if you consume 1 whole nutmeg, you could potentially get what's called nutmeg psychosis, because nutmeg mimics certain psychoactive compounds that they use in certain medications. There's been a report of an 8-year-old who ate 2 whole nutmegs and died. So it can be very poisonous if you're going to use nutmeg. Don't use a lot. Now let's talk about green raw almonds, which are very bitter as well as raw cashews. These have been known to contain a certain amount of cyanide, but they have to be the bitter almonds, and you have to consume quite a few of them to become totally poisoned. Probably over 1,000 of these nuts, or about 50 ounces. You probably would never do that, but just realize that even with a smaller amount there will be a small amount of cyanide. So instead of buying bitter almonds, get the sweet almonds. And if you get them roasted, they're not going to have hardly any cyanide. Side effects from cyanide can be convulsions, respiratory failure, and death. However, with every poison there's always an antidote. The next thing I want to talk about is undercooked red kidney beans. You must always soak them for at least 5 hours and then boil them and put them on slow cook for at least 30 minutes of boiling. If you put them on slow cook and you don't cook long enough, you could potentially increase the toxicity by a factor of 5. The chemical in uncooked red kidney beans is called ephia. This compound causes your red blood cells and white blood cells to bind together and clump. Side effects are diarrhea, abdominal pain, vomiting, and even death. However, so far there have not been any human deaths. We're talking about rat deaths. If you give a rat 1% of this compound, apparently they do not live past 2 weeks. So for your pet gerbils and hamsters, do not feed them undercooked red kidney beans. If you're on keto, you're not going to be consuming many beans, so you don't have to worry about it. Now let's talk about the next one, brown rice, which, if you're on keto, you're not going to be consuming either. Brown rice has arsenic, which can lead to heart disease and bladder cancer and many other symptoms. The reason you have arsenic in brown rice is because a lot of the soils it has grown on used to grow cotton, which was heavily sprayed with arsenic. Until fairly recently, they used a lot of arsenic in insecticides and pesticides, and so the soils have been contaminated. That can get absorbed right into certain plants, especially brown rice. Apparently, brown rice has very elevated levels of arsenic that could be considered carcinogenic. The other problem with arsenic is that they used to feed it to chickens in their feed to increase weight gain to create food efficiency. Food efficiency is when the chicken is so fat it's not eating anymore, it's not hungry anymore, and that is all because of arsenic. As far as I know, most of the companies that put arsenic in feed are no longer using those products, but do quote me. There might be 1 or 2 still using it, specifically for turkeys. In 2011, they stopped using arsenic. But the problem is before that, back into the 1940s. They used it from 1940, all the way up until 2011, so we've all been exposed to arsenic, unfortunately. But of course, if you have been doing organic chicken, you'll be in pretty good shape. One indication that you have arsenic poisoning is if you look at your nails, there will be white lines horizontally on the nail. That could be an indication of too much arsenic in your body. There are certain antidotes to arsenic. One is blue-green algae, another is selenium, and another is zinc. They're involved in certain enzymes that can help detoxify arsenic from your body. Alright, I want to talk about uncooked bloody hamburger. I'm sorry, I know that's disgusting, but that's the problem. If you buying low-quality meat from your local grocery store, you could be exposed to E. coli. There's a very toxic form of E. coli called verotoxigenic E. coli, VTEC, which apparently can create serious damage to your kidneys, loss of kidney function, sepsis, a systemic infection, coma, even death. So there are two things you need to do. Make sure the quality of beef you consume is high, and make sure it's cooked to the point where there's no potential for E. coli. I think it's more important to get a quality source of beef. So if you're going to do something rare, if it's quality, chances are it's not going to have pathogens like salmonella or E. coli. E. coli comes from the cow's intestine, and in processing that meat sometimes there's cross-contamination. The next one is cherry pits. Cherry pits have hydrogen cyanide. I know you're probably saying, I don't consume cherry pits, I just consume the cherry. And of course, if you're on keto, you're not even eating cherries. But just in case you end up swallowing a few, they are a bit toxic. One red cherry pit has about 3.9 milligrams of hydrogen cyanide. One black cherry pit has about 2.7 milligrams. But one Morello cherry pit has about 65 milligrams of hydrogen cyanide. The toxicity level would be between 0.2 to 1.6 milligrams per pound of your body weight. That concludes our list of foods that you need to avoid. And the next video I think you should watch right now is the healthiest foods you need to eat. Check it out.